Welcome to Riviera Rats, a Palme d'Or podcast. I am Greg.
I'm Bill. I forgot to eat my snack before we started.
You all right then, Bill?
I'm good.
You toffee-nosed cow.
Once I have a Rice Krispie square in me, I'm the happiest person alive.
What's new with you, Bill? What's new with you in the movies?
What's new with me in the movie? Well, since we last recorded, you and I have watched at least one more Cannes selection, right? We watched Megalopolis.
Oof.
That was torture and a half.
What did you think of Anti-Wow Platinum?
I actually don't remember the movie at all.
That bad?
Once it got going, I knew it was garbage, and a part of my brain just turned off.
Yeah.
And I don't remember it at all.
Even if the movie made any narrative sense, and it doesn't, it's really fucking ugly.
It's really ugly, and then it's a movie where, like, I never knew what was happening, but I knew what it was about. Like, I knew we were watching something that was sort of his commentary on religion and... not religion. On politics and culture, and then religion as well. But the details of it, like, don't ask me what it's actually about, or why Adam Driver spends his time on a rooftop, or all of it. Like, I just don't get it.
Why the statues are moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are recording this podcast at an interesting moment. Of course, it will be released a couple of months from now. But we just lost a famous cinematographer a few days ago,
Yes.
Dick Pope,
who is relevant to today's discussion.
That's right. He was Mike Leigh's main guy for 12 of his movies.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about some of his work in our Palme d'Or winner today. Our Palme d'Or winner today is Secrets and Lies.
Secrets and Lies.
Secrets and Lies. And it's also exciting that we are talking about it at this moment because we're about to see in theaters the new Mike Leigh collaboration with Marianne Jean-Baptiste.
Hopefully by the time we release this, we will have seen it, I'm hoping.
I'm very excited about it. The movie is called Hard Truths. I'm so excited to see Jean-Baptiste working with Mike Leigh again. Mm-hmm. We'll talk more about her work in this movie. And I'm a little sad to imagine this could be our last Mike Leigh movie because it sounds like he's getting really sick of the industry.
He always sounds like that, though. That's how he always talks.
Oh, okay. He's having real difficulty getting his next project off the ground.
Well, everyone who makes non-superhero movies is having trouble getting their movies off the ground because the only option is to make them on micro budgets. And I don't blame someone like Mike Leigh, who has conquered the world over with his films, from saying, at least give me a mid-level budget.
Yeah.
But no one's putting that kind of money into movies anymore. They're probably telling him to make everything into a Netflix series. That's probably the offers he's getting.
Actually, he'd make an incredible Netflix series.
Sure, he would, but that's probably not what he's interested in.
No, it's not. It's not what I need from him either.
He cares about the glory of... like, Mike Leigh is a brilliant filmmaker, and I'm not actually throwing shade on him, but the man does love a red carpet, and he shows up ready to win no matter, what he's done or where he is. The reason why I'm okay with that is because he actually puts the work into, like, making things deserving of the praise that he demands. But, he keeps track of, like, who doesn't give him awards.
He does. He works so hard, and he does so much prep for his movies. The sense I get is he's just so proud that he can't imagine not getting acknowledgement for his efforts.
Yeah. I think it's just an ego. I think he just has an ego, and that's okay. Having an ego is sort of what promotes you to do the work in the first place.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm trying to say is he's never been a director who's ever turned in an assignment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've only ever really disliked 2 of his movies, and he's made a lot of movies, so...
Won't you tell us about this year, Bill?
Well, first of all, you forgot to mention that this is our first episode of the new year, so Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody.
I understand that we're recording this not in the new year, Greg. I don't know if you know how Time Machine works.
I don't know how to say that with any vitality. Like, do I start to do old Land Sang? Is that what it's called?
No, it's not, in fact, so don't sing it if you can't say it. Jesus Christ. All right, so we are covering the 49th Cannes Film Festival, which ran from May 9th to May the 20th of 1996. It was the 49th festival, but it was kind of like the 50th year because it was 50 years since the very first festival in 46. which is why the very first Best Actress winner, Michelle Morgan, appeared at the festival to show her 1946 film La Symphonie Pastorale, which she won the award for. There's a great clip of her that I found online of her getting off a train being interviewed, like literally walking off the train and a microphone's in her face, being like, "Why didn't you take a plane?" And she's like, "I hate to fly." And she was really still looked the most beautiful woman in the world and very excited to come and show her film. This is the festival where Ewan McGregor showed up an unknown and left a star because of the celebrated screening of Trainspotting, not in competition, but a very well-received film.
And also because of the Pillow Book.
Yes. He's so delicious in that.
In both movies, he shows Dong.
His daughter said that her teacher showed the Pillow Book in one of her classes in university, and it was the worst day of her entire life. Because he gets down with old Japanese men in that movie. He gets super down. Gilles Jacob wrote in his book that at this particular festival, Gérard Depardieu yelled at him, quote unquote, in a way that I've never been shouted at in my life, not even by my father. Depardieu was upset that his film Unhook the Stars, which is it's a Cassavetes film. What's the son's name?
Oh, Nick Cassavetes.
Nick Cassavetes. It's a Nick Cassavetes film starring Marissa Tomei and Jenna Rollins, theme song by Cyndi Lauper. And he was very upset that it was not chosen for competition. It was offered to be an Uncertain Regard. It didn't end up at the festival at all, so I don't know what ultimately went down with that. The mistress of ceremonies this year at the award ceremony is Sabine Azema, fantastic actress, also well known as the partner of Alain Resnais, Greg's favorite director. Coppola's entry to the festival was accompanied by the music of The Ride of the Valkyries, of course, because that is, of course, the music from Apocalypse Now, his second Palme winner. So we also have the delightful personality of one Lars von Trier, who was very pissed off in 1984 when he didn't win the Palme d'Or for The Element of Crime, which is an incredibly boring film. It won the technical prize, which is always seen as the sort of certificate of participation for, like, thanks for coming, but you don't get a real prize. He was furious about this, so this year, when he brings Breaking the Waves, he refuses to watch the coverage from home of the ceremony. He refuses to come. It's playing on his television at home. His producer is watching. Lars is in the next room playing video games. Because Lars is an absolute child.
He's insufferable.
Who needs everyone to know that he was in the next room playing video games.
Oh, and I just know that the video game was Wolfenstein. On to the other competitions. In Camera d'Or, our jury president is French actress Françoise Fabienne. And Bill, what should I know her from?
I don't know what you know her from. I know her best from My Night at Maud's, which you haven't seen yet, but she's fantastic. Yeah.
And the prize went to Love Serenade by Shirley Barrett. In Uncertain Regard, Bill, you only get 60 seconds to talk about your love of Angelica Houston. She has in competition Bastard Out of Carolina.
Yeah, her directorial debut, a very controversial film that was banned in Canada on the East Coast before there was a public outcry about the ban, because apparently child abuse is a particular problem out there, and they thought that it was that particular part of Canada sweeping its own dirty secrets under the rug. It's a wonderful film based on the novel by Dorothy Allison. It's got a great supporting performance by one of my favorite character actresses, Diana Scarwood.
That's Spice Girl, Diana Scarwood.
And Spice Girl, Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah. I don't think we've explained what Spice Girls are yet.
Let's do it. Let's.
So did I explain it on a previous episode? I don't remember.
No, we never have. I think we're just assuming people are listening
as
to
cool
BGM
as we are.
well.
So Greg and our friend Daniel Krolik, who hosts the Bad Gay Movies podcast with me, decided one night, because I'd love to say that they were drunk, but they're not cool enough for that. They just decided for fun to cast the Spice Girls using actresses who have one Best Supporting Actress nomination in their entire careers. They cannot have won. They cannot have been nominated for anything else.
And they cannot have had an honorary award either.
Right. So a singular Best Supporting Actress nominee is a Spice Girl. Jennifer Jason Leigh is Scary Spice. Diana Scarwood is a baby. And so is Carol Channing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also in competition for A Certain Regard, we have A Summer's Tale by Eric Romer.
Yeah, featuring a very cute, silky little Melville Poupeau.
Ooh, well, he comes up later.
Yeah.
Haha.
I come up later.
And I might be saying this wrong, Gabe by Musen Malkbelbaf. And then we've got by Mary Herron, I Shot Andy Warhol, the movie that pretty much launched her career.
Yeah. I remember seeing it in the theater.
I remember reading the screenplay because it was in my high school library.
Oh.
And the end of the screenplay was it included the Scum Manifesto by Valerie Solanas.
Oh.
We've got Irma Vep by Olivier Assayas. We've got Looking for Richard by Al Pacino. Some Other Son by Terry George.
Yep.
We've got The Pallbearer by Matt Reeves, starring Gwyneth Paltrow and David Schwimmer. And this is one of Miramax's first efforts to turn Gwyneth Paltrow into a star.
Yes, she didn't want to do it, but I think they said do this and then we'll give you, I guess, Emma or Shakespeare in Love. I don't remember which one. It's not a great film. I saw it in the theater. The thing I like about it is it was the first time I saw Toni Collette in anything after Muriel's Wedding.
And speaking of The Pillow Book, it's here in this competition by Peter Greenaway. In International Critics Week, we've got The Day Trippers by Greg Mottola. I just watched this movie recently. Yeah, it's fun. It's breezy, and I like who's that actress I love? Who's the mother of Ben Stiller?
Oh, Anne Mira. Yeah,
she's great in it.
Yeah, Steve's mom on Sex and the City. This pizza is terrible. Yeah.
Miranda, my mom wants to eat pizza out of the garbage.
Miranda, what? I'm a bartender and I'm cute.
I've got one testicle, Miranda.
Miranda.
In Director's Fortnight, we have Beautiful Thing by Hattie MacDonald, which I've never seen, but I want to know from
delightful.
you.
It's adorable. It's a very sweet gay romance, yeah.
Okay, so not a BGM. That was my question.
No, I mean, I don't know. At the time that I saw it, I didn't think so. Who knows? I've become much more cruel and unkind since.
We've got A Chef in Love by Nana Djordjadze. And we've got Jude by Michael Winterbottom, and I
still
assume,
haven't seen,
which I know is high on your list of movies to watch because it's got your lovely Kate in it.
Yes, that's right. It's one of the few films of hers I haven't seen.
This is Kate Winslet we're talking about, not Kate Blanchett.
And I even studied the book in school, and I still haven't seen it.
Oh, who's the book by?
Thomas Hardy. It's the Obscure.
We've got Prisoner of the Mountains by Sergei Bodrov, which is about the Chechen War.
Yep.
From the Dardenne brothers, we have La Promesse, which is considered one of their classics.
I've never seen it. I think it's one of their few films I haven't seen. It's like the movie. It's not actually their first feature after years of television, but it's the movie that established them.
And then they come back in 3 years and get the palm.
That's right.
We've got Lone Star by John Sayles, which I've still not seen, and I really need to because I love Matthew McConaughey spreading his legs in the 90s.
I love John Sayles more than life itself, although that is not one of my favorites of his, and it's weird to me that it's like one of his most celebrated films. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it is this really interesting, convoluted narrative.
He's also, it needs to be said, along with Jim Jarmusch, one of the sexiest filmmakers ever.
Yeah. Yeah, like he's the father of American independent cinema. He's also the daddy of American independence.
They both are.
Yeah.
Jim Jarmusch still fundraises for all of his movies.
Yeah.
And then we've got Trees Lounge by Steve Buscemi, and it wouldn't be a party with Kate and Gwyneth if Chloe Sevigny wasn't also there. Out of competition, we've got Flirting with Disaster by David O. Russell, a movie I really enjoyed when it came out, and I wonder if I would like it upon second viewing.
Yeah.
We've got Girl 6 by Spike Lee, a much maligned movie that you still need to watch because it has a brief appearance by Madonna.
Yeah, with her dog.
And ding, 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 Isabel Watch.
Isabel Watch.
We've got Le Affinità Elettive.
Ooh, that hurt.
That hurt?
Elective Affinities by, is it Goethe who wrote that? I don't remember.
Fuck.
Le Affinità Elettive. I copied that and I forgot to translate it for you, so that's actually my problem. By the Taviani brothers. Her only time working with them. Another case of one of those movies where it's difficult to watch a movie where an actor very well is dubbed by someone else in another language. Like, it's very distracting because she's got an Italian woman's voice speaking for her the entire time.
Oh, so we've got a Tilda in a Belatar movie situation.
Yeah. It's also not a great film, but
And winning a technical prize, we've got Microcosmos by Claude Nuridzani and Marie Perrenou.
Is that the Bug movie?
It's the Bug movie. It's cool. It is truly dazzling.
Never seen it.
And then a big splash of a movie. We've got Trainspotting by Danny Boyle.
Mm-hmm.
A movie that put Ewan McGregor and his dong on the map.
That's right.
That introduced us to one of our loves, Kelly MacDonald.
That's right.
It unleashed Irvin Welsh onto the world and has one of the best soundtracks of all time.
It's also one of the movies that has aged. It's probably the movie that has aged the best of everything from 1996. It is still so fresh and funny without, like, even, I remember Secrets and Lies feeling like a documentary when I first watched it, and I still think it's a 5-star movie, but it doesn't quite strike me that way anymore, whilst Trainspotting is still modern.
It's still modern. None of its Gen X smart aleck cinema dialogue has soured.
Yeah.
You know the way like the Ezekiel speech from Pulp Fiction gets tired.
Right.
Nothing in Trainspotting gets tired.
Yeah, and I don't even know if Danny Boyle knows what he did right, because none of his other films have this particularly eternal quality.
No, but my second
even the ones
favorite,
I like. Yeah.
My second favorite of his is the one from before, Shallow Grave.
Oh, I don't like that movie.
I think it's a lot of fun, but you know what I think about Carrie Fox.
Carrie Fox, yeah.
And then, we've got a couple of little movies that Bill likes winning awards this year. At the Oscars this year, we've got The English Patient. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. When you leave here, you should forget me. Every night, I cut out my heart, and in the morning, it had grown full again. Herodotus is the father of history. Did you know that? I don't know anything.
Jesus Christ, Bill.
Jeffrey's not in Cairo. The plane was not a wedding present. It belongs to the British government.
In case you've not been following Bill's podcasting up to this moment, Bill, why don't you tell everybody about that A+ you got on your paper on The English Patient again?
I wrote a paper on the adaptation of The English Patient, Book 2 film, and I got an A+ from a very venerated professor of English at the University of Toronto. Thank you very much.
Winning the best foreign language film that year was Kolya. And I'm a stupid bitch. I don't remember where it's from.
It's the Czech Republic, and is the first film to win from the Czech Republic, like post-fall of the Soviet Union. It's an okay film. None of the films in the foreign film category that year are particular. None of them are bad, but none of them are exciting to me. We've already mentioned 3 of them: A Chef in Love, Prisoner of the Mountains. There's Kolya. And then Ridicule is in the competition, and I'll think of the 5th one in a second. Go on.
Winning the Golden Lion at Venice, we've got Michael Collins by Neil Jordan, a movie I've still not seen.
Yeah, it's a solid biopic. It's nothing exciting. It's the kind of I always wonder about the Venice Film Festival and why it is that they are so much more likely to pick what they think will be an Oscar winner. I don't know, because they operate like Cannes, which is that it's a different jury every year. But I don't know. There's something about that festival that really pushes their choices towards caring about the North American market and the award season.
I feel like they're trying to one-up Toronto because of their placement in the fall.
Maybe.
And then the Golden Bear went to a movie from the year before, Sense and Sensibility by Ang Lee, written by Bill's truly Emma Thompson.
Yes, and the best Jane Austen movie other than Clueless.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But Bill, won't you tell us about this jury?
All right. The jury, as previously mentioned, Francis Ford Coppola is the jury president. It is not unusual for a previous Palme winner to be invited to be on the jury or preside over the jury. In this case, we have a member of the very select group of double Palme winners. I think there's 10 of them. Also on the jury, we have German cinematographer Michael Ballhaus, who has now passed away, but who was nominated for Oscars for Broadcast News. And I mentioned this on BGM recently. What was the other one that he was up for? And he also shot The Age of Innocence and Bram Stoker's Dracula. We have one of my favorite French actresses, Nathalie Baye, who American viewers might know as Leonardo DiCaprio's mom in Catch Me If You Can. But I know her from a great deal of her French work. I feel like she gets a lot of her parts when Isabelle Huppert turns them down. I feel like that's her place in the pecking order, even though she has her own vibe. She was also in a wonderful film in the late 90s called Un liaison pornographique, a pornographic affair, also known as An Affair of Love, which I really liked her in. I've just always really liked her. She also has a great episode of Call My Agent. French journalist, presenter, and director Henri Chapier, who I'm not particularly familiar with. Canadian filmmaker Adam Egoyan, who the following year would have his biggest year at Cannes with his second prize win for The Sweet Hereafter, but at this point is already quite loved by the French. He's presented Exotica and Calendar at the festival and to great acclaim. I think Calendar or The Adjuster, I don't remember.
And Bill and I see him in Toronto on the regular.
Yes. As I like to point out to people, when you come to Toronto, you will often see Adam Egoyan and his partner Patrice Leconte walking the streets, usually looking lost. I don't know why. Every time, her especially, whenever I see her, she looks like she's looking for something. She doesn't know where something is. And I'm always afraid to offer help in case she gets scared and flees back into the bushes. But yeah, seeing them out and about on the street is a regular Toronto occurrence. And then back in the days when I used to go to Jackman Hall for Cinematheque Ontario, he would often be there. He usually had somebody hold the seat in the middle of the very front row, and he would walk in always just as the lights were coming down and grab his seat, so everyone would see him taking a seat. I don't know if he did it on purpose.
Yeah, it feels like a flex. I'd picture.
Well, I saw it like 10 times, so I'm like, either you're just always behind schedule, or yeah.
Yeah. Arsène Kanjian, for my money, is one of the most beautiful women.
Without a doubt, and someone I love seeing on film, and I particularly love hearing her voice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a very talented artist who died far too young, the Japanese artist and costume designer Aiko Ishioka, who won an Academy Award for her costume design of Bram Stoker's Dracula, as well as doing really incredible makeup and costume work on that terrible Jennifer Lopez movie, where we go into Vincent D'Onofrio's mind, The Cell.
The Cell.
Yeah. And she got her last nomination for Mirror, Mirror, which I believe was a posthumous nomination.
The gay listeners of this program would recognize a reference to her work in Bram Stoker's Dracula when one of the Drag Race winners wore a Bram Stoker's Dracula-inspired gown.
Oh, okay.
To her finale.
I loved her gown when she won the Oscar, actually. I thought that was a really cool choice for that award as well. She first came to Coppola's notice when she did the Japanese poster design for Apocalypse Now back in the early 80s. We have Krzysztof Pisevich, a screenwriter best known to me as the frequent collaborator of Krzysztof Kieslowski. He wrote the Three Colors trilogy with him. I think he wrote everything with him, but he was nominated for an Oscar for his screenplay for Three Colors Red, which is one of my two favorite Kieslowski films. We have the
gorgeously photographed.
Yes. We have the wonderful Italian actress Greta Scacchi, who I just adore. Italian writer Antonio Tabucchi. And last but not least, we have Vietnamese-French filmmaker Tran Anh Hung, who last year made Greg's and my number one favorite film of the year, The Taste of Things. It's still not out on Blu-ray for some reason, and it's really pissing me off. And he, of course, won Best Director for that last year. And he would have been on this jury post the success of his Scent of Green Papaya, which earned Vietnam its still so far only Oscar nomination for Best Foreign Language Film.
On to the competition list. We've got winning the grand prize, Lars von Trier's Breaking the Waves, a movie that's become something of a classic. It made the long list for the BFI poll in 2012. It's considered one of Lars von Trier's best. But I want to know, Bill, what do you think about this movie?
I think it's his best. I've never liked any of his films as much. The thing about Lars von Trier for me is even when I really like his films, they tend to be worth very little after the first viewing because he intentionally manipulates his stories in order to put his characters into vulnerable positions in order to exploit their trauma as a way to maybe not celebrate it, certainly as a way to give the actresses performing them, and it's usually female actors, giving them the opportunity to really rock out in their performance.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how many of his films won Best Actress, especially at Cannes. There's three of them, as far as I can tell. Right? Yeah, three.
We've got Bjork, Kirsten Dunst, and Charlotte Gainsbourg. Yep.
And then, of course, Emily Watson earned her first Oscar nomination for Breaking the Waves. The best thing about Breaking the Waves for me is that it does hold up to repeated viewings. I know you're about to contradict me on this because apparently you felt that eyebrow thing. That's very creepy. Um, it's bad enough you strike me as what happens when Stewie Griffin grows up.
Fucking bitch.
Yeah. So I do find that this movie is still good in that it doesn't feel as intentionally manipulated as opposed to like the second time you watch Dancer in the Dark. I don't respond to it emotionally at all because it's clearly his intention to make sure she dies.
Yeah.
In Dogville, that's kind of part of the point. I don't like Manderley at all. I don't like Antichrist either. I admire aspects of it, but I don't like that film. And I was underwhelmed by Melancholia. So I don't know. I really love Breaking the Waves. I love her. I love its look. I don't find it boring, even though it's like really, really long and really grim. I think there's something about it that really feels close to the bone in a way his other films don't.
Yeah, it's incredibly well paced. I would give it a technical prize for photography to Robbie Mueller. I think this movie is really beautiful. And I remember seeing it in high school and thinking it was good, maybe because I thought I was supposed to think it was good, as we tend to do when we first start hunting down awards-winning movies.
Yeah.
And it was something I hadn't seen before. It was a kind of tragedy I had not seen before. But upon second viewing, I really find that it blows its wad in the last act, and it's that point you made about Dancer in the Dark, which is that he's clearly more fascinated by her torture than her sainthood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Von Trier is obsessed with making sure we all know how vulnerable he is, and he uses his characters as a way to kind of explore that and celebrate it, and he makes them as vulnerable as possible. I think that's why he chooses women as well, and they're always like simple women. This and Dancer in the Dark, they're always like a little bit touched, to make sure that he really shores up an imbalance of like vulnerability on their side to make sure that we feel sorry for them as much as possible. And given that, I think it's amazing that his movies are as watchable as they are.
Well, because he makes gorgeous images as well.
Yeah.
Like his movies are very watchable. It's just afterwards I start to ruminate on what they're about, and then I get pissy.
I do remember, though, that this film did not have much of a divided reaction. I remember it just acclaim across the board. From Cannes to the Toronto Festival. My best friend Heather saw it before I did, and I remember her raving about it. And it's not the kind of movie she would like, especially once you get to the point where she's being like really, really mistreated. It's not the kind of thing Heather would go for. So Heather was always better at sniffing out a lack of integrity than I was.
And I just want to know, is there anybody out there who's trying to cast Udo Kier as an everyman? Like, does he ever just wear jeans?
I know.
Winning our jury prize, our special jury prize in this case, and we'll get into that, is Crash by Canada's own David Cronenberg, the king of body horror.
Yep.
This movie caused a stir when it came out. You might, like watching it today, if you're watching it for the first time, you might have difficulty imagining how much it incensed people, but this movie was banned in many regions. It was a talking point for the hardcore right on both sides of the pond.
Yeah.
It caused...
And in ways that had interesting reactions, like the fact that somebody in England talked about how this movie was disgusting because it showed him having sex with a disabled person. And then the disabled community were like, actually, it's not disgusting to have sex with us. And then they took this movie up as sort of their cause.
It became a lightning rod for political discourse of all kind.
Forever. Like, it started at Cannes, but then when it came out in Canada, there were issues with the ratings board, and in the States. In the States, they had 2 versions released. It was incredible. It just would not stop.
It had censorship issues in Ontario for a short while as well.
Yep.
Which is not common. Movies don't get censored very commonly in Canada. Or
in Ontario, they do. We have a long history of our ratings board being incredibly prim about that stuff.
Fat Girl was another movie that could not be released for a long time here.
Yeah.
And the movie was divisive at Cannes. I think a lot of... It seems a lot of people... People were pissed off about this movie for a number of reasons. One was from the gay rights contingent, people were ticked that you see tons of women's tits and ass, but the men's intimacy doesn't look as full frontal. Let's just
No,
put it
not
that
at
way.
all.
And James Spader's response to that was that's just geographical. The reason why you don't see men's dicks is because they're fucking. You just can't see dicks when they're inside people.
Yes. And Cronenberg pointed out that the men are the first time you see kissing.
And it's actually the only time that sex in the movie is sexy and not clinical looking.
Yeah, that might just be us, but yeah.
Yeah, that might just be us as well. Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine, even if I try to put on my best
I know.
hetero hat, I can't picture Deborah Kara Unger in this movie being erotic.
Well, it's also because she's playing like a take on a femme fatale, and she's doing it very well, but that doesn't come across as a real person. And then Holly Hunter is intentionally playing somebody who looks like your accounting teacher. Like, that's kind of the joke with that character, that she's so involved in all this stuff, but she's got that like Playmobil hair wig.
Crying game.
Yeah, totally. And so it's hard to generate a lot of heat from those two ladies in the way that they have been presented as figures. While as Elias Koteas actually like embodies that kind of perverse obsession that the character has, and he's really sexy.
He's very sexy. He's sexy for like 2 straight decades.
Yeah.
But this was a complaint that people had, and in the press release, people had questions about why the sex doesn't look hot.
Yeah.
Without getting into it anymore, there's a really good Karina Longworth episode you can go and listen to where like she really breaks it down and covers like...
It's also not his intention to make a sexy movie. It's his intention to make a sort of a, not parody, but like a little bit of a burlesque on this increased obsession and reliance on mechanical devices in our world that is fusing our organic bodies with machinery, which is something that pops up in his films a lot. So it's not really the fact that it's not that hot is kind of the point. What shocked me most was that I found this movie kind of trite watching it again for this show.
Really?
It was an obsessive favorite of mine when it came out. I think I was a virgin when it came out, and I feel like watching sex in movies is different once you've actually done it.
Yeah, that's true.
And gotten old enough to get kind of sick of men and their stories. So that might be it. But, or maybe it is just the fact that the landscape of entertainment has gotten so much more permissive that whatever was shocking about this movie isn't shocking anymore. But I didn't love it because it was shocking back then. I remember loving it because I just thought it was so smart and so cool. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of died down around for me. I don't think it's a bad movie, but a lot of it means a lot less to me than it did back then. But I do like the photography. I love the fact that they're always driving and they're only covering like 2 kilometers of the Gardner Expressway, but they make it look like they're driving all over the world. I like everybody in it. And I have a wonderful memory of the night that I saw it, which was the night, it was in the fall of 96, and it was the night before it was going to be released properly in theaters. And my friend called me and said, Paul and I are going to the Uptown, my friend Jay, who you met at the movies recently. Mm-hmm. He called and he said, Paul and I are going to the Uptown to catch Crash. David Cronenberg's going to be there in person. So we went. This is the days before you could book anything online because there was no online. And it was sold out when we got there, so we waited in a rush line. The Uptown, I don't know if you ever went there. I don't think you ever did. It was a giant movie palace at Yonge and Bloor that had a balcony. It had like thousands of seats and a screen as big as a building. So the 3 of us waited in the rush line. We got in, but there were no seats available. My friend sat in the aisle, and I found a seat on the... Like, we did not see each other throughout the film. And I just remember being thrilled by the movie, and then Cronenberg spoke to us, did a Q&A after, and he's always so wonderful to hear speak. So it was just a great night.
He really is. He's very erudite. I've been obsessively watching all of the Criterions that are in competition for this show. This Criterion in particular is very rewarding. I recommend it to people. Both discs are just filled with material that adds to the enjoyment of the movie. In fact, makes the movie more enjoyable, or like enjoyable at all, if you otherwise would feel like you don't have an entry point into it.
I had it on Laserdisc. I had that Criterion on Laserdisc, and I think you were probably watching a lot of the same features.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
And Cronenberg, he's just so erudite. He's so scholarly. He knows how to talk about movies. He's so intentional about everything he's making in his movies. And I'm getting really excited for his next one that's coming out in December, The Shrouds.
I'll wait and see. I find that I haven't liked anything of his in so long that I don't know. But famously, Coppola hated this movie. He hated Crash. and apparently refused to present him with his jury prize. And I read another interview with Cronenberg where he talked about it, and he knew full well that Coppola didn't like the film, but he goes, I think it's really weird that I've run into Francis Ford Coppola over the years from time to time at a function, and he always says, hey, remember we gave you that award? And he's like, why do you keep reminding me of that when you didn't want to give it to me? Because it was the rest of the jury who decided, because that is apparently part of the process. The jury is allowed to give a certain prize. Well, it's called the jury prize. They are allowed to give it without the president's approval. And then he also said, a few years later, I was president of the jury, and I just accepted the fact that there were some movies that the jury liked that I wasn't on board for, and you just get over it. Like he goes, I thought it was kind of petty of him to make such a big deal about not wanting to give my movie an award.
I mean, I need to hear from you. What's your read on Coppola? Because he's the president of this jury. He just made a movie that is an egocentric disaster.
Yeah.
And he's a little bitch to Cronenberg. Like, is this just a guy who, like, is he like a Don Quixote figure?
I mean, he's never made anything that I've seen that's as bad as Megalopolis, so I don't consider that to be his sort of baseline.
Wow, that's saying something. You think Jacques is better than Megalopolis?
I haven't seen Jacques, but he made a lot of movies that I loved, like Peggy Sue Got Married. I don't know. He had success really early in his career. When he made The Godfather, I think we all forget that movie changed the world, and that he was treated like his shit did not stink. And like, I don't know, how do you maintain and like his biggest movies took so much out of him, and that's part of the narrative of him. The way he had a nervous breakdown during Apocalypse Now, and he almost died. And he's someone where the personality is always a part of the story of the film and the making of the film.
Yeah.
So he's probably a lot, but I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, no, he fascinates me. I
think from his point of view, he probably thinks he's just being honest. Like he
probably
doesn't want to ruin Cronenberg's trip to Cannes, but he's also not going to lie about the fact that he I think that kind of diplomacy is not really worth anything to him.
Mm-hmm. Oh dear, winning Best Actor. We have the first tie in history.
Mm.
It's kind of a stunner that the first tie goes to this.
Is that the first Best Actor tie?
It's here. It says it was the first time such an event happened that two people had tied for their role in a film.
Oh, so well, yes,
for their role in the same movie.
Yeah. Tie is the wrong. Tie is always the wrong word, and I'm the one who used it, but it's the wrong word for what happens in film festivals, which is not that you count votes and there's a tie. It's that they make the choice to give it
to both of them.
Yeah.
And this went to Daniel Auteuil and Pascal Duquesne for Le Huitième Jour, or The Eighth Day, by is that Jaco van Dormael?
I think it's Jaco. I'm not sure. He's Belgian, and I've never liked any of his films.
This movie is steaming hot garbage.
Yep.
Bill, won't you in a line tell our listeners what it's about?
It's about a businessman who needs to stop and smell the roses and appreciate his family because he's gotten too obsessed with work. And then he gives a ride to a man who has Down syndrome.
Yep.
And who throws a tantrum every 3 minutes, and we're supposed to find it endearing. And then he drives him all over Belgium to find his family. Is it? I don't remember.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends like Patch Adams, where all of the people who have escaped the same institution as the other lead, they all come to rescue Daniel Auteuil from his 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
There's a dramatic climax where our other lead, Pascal, he dances to "Jesus He Knows Me" by Genesis in the Radio Shack.
Yeah.
It's a pretty embarrassing movie. And it's in my running for one of our highly coveted prizes that we give out every episode.
But you have to see the interview done on French television after they won, where the earpiece falls out of Pascal Duquesne's ear, and he just spends the rest of the interview trying to get it back in while Daniel Auteuil covers for him and says lovely things about how happy he is that it meant so much more that he shared the prize with his co-star. And he says this giving it to both of us erases the differences between us, all these lovely things. You also have the reporter on that interview refer to Pascal Duquesne in French as un Mongolien, which
Oh no.
maybe that's not as problematic a word in French as it would be even in 1996 in English.
Oof.
But yeah, it's great that this is also not a stunt performance. This is a man with actual Down syndrome
Yeah.
playing the role. But this movie's insufferable. And I don't, like I said, I don't like any of von Dormael's films. This is the one I like the least. But Toto le Héros is also uh, annoying. And I actually mix it up with this one, so I don't even remember which happened in which one. And then his Jared Leto sci-fi film Mr. Nobody, which is basically a sci-fi version of Toto le Héros, is also not that great.
And it's just a bummer that this is what this world-class French actor gets his Cannes Prize for.
Yeah, including the fact that he was better in the other film he was in competition this year, which I think you didn't see because you don't know how to work subtitles.
Thank you, Bill. Best Actress went to Brenda Blessin for Secrets and Lies. And we can talk more about that when we get to our palm.
Give us a hug, sweetheart!
I eat everything. Chinese food, kebabs, the whole lot.
You want some salad, Paul? It'll make you go.
Bloody hell.
Bloody hell. I don't mean no disrespect or nothing, but I ain't never been with a black man in my life. Oh, bloody hell!
Best director went to Joel Coen. This is before he is one of two directors of the Coen Brothers movies.
Yeah.
Up until the aughts, Coen Brothers movies were always directed by Joel and produced by Ethan and written by the both of them.
That's right. This is the first movie that brings them to the Oscars as well.
They were never nominated before?
They were never nominated before. Barton Fink had 3 nominations, but not for them.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And this, I would do some rejigging. Like, this would win my Grand Prix, and I'd give director to Crash.
Yeah.
This movie's great.
It's great. I love Fargo so much. This is also a year where so much of Cannes ends up at the Oscars, which is not that regular a case in the 90s. Certainly not before this, because we've mentioned a bunch of Oscar films already. Including,
we're in an interesting period where Cannes is starting to influence the Oscars in a way.
And the independent film movement is very much influencing the Oscars. You had 4 of 5 Best Picture nominees this year coming from independents. And Jerry Maguire was the only studio film nominated, and it didn't have a chance in hell of winning.
No, but that movie has aged better than a couple of the other nominees.
Sure. It's also before Miramax was considered a studio. I think it would have been considered a major by the end of the decade, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The last time I watched this, I appreciated the performances from William H. Macy and Harve Presnell a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that Paul Bunyan statue scares me.
Yeah. You'd still bottom for it, though.
Well, it's part of the appeal.
And the bull. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about this movie?
No, I mean, what is there to say about Fargo that everyone doesn't know? Like, the movie is great. The TV show is great. It's their kind of humor done better than before or since. It's just fantastic. I think it's so great. It's so adorable and cruel at the same time. And that the way that they strike that balance so perfectly is why he deserves a prize specifically for his direction.
And is Deakins known for anything before this movie, or does this announce him?
Not to me. I didn't know him before. Although he had shot... Didn't he shoot Sid and Nancy? Isn't that him?
I don't remember.
Yeah. I only watch that movie all the time.
I do love how the movie finishes with the line, and it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day.
Fargo?
Yeah.
Yeah, for a little bit of money. There's more to life than money, Didn't you know that? Also a great performance winning an Oscar for comedy.
That's true. That rarely happens.
Yeah.
And we've done a couple of those now. We just did Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Yeah.
Winning Best Screenplay, we have 2 writers, right? It's not just Jacques Audiard.
I believe so, yeah.
It's him and a dude who's the son of Pierre Bourdieu.
Okay.
Yeah, a famous French philosopher. This movie is called Self-Made Hero, or Un héros très discret. And it's a World War II satire? Yeah, I'd say so. It's great. I really liked it. I went in trepidatiously because Bill's made it clear on this show that Audiard's movies are often way overrated. and this is my first, and I liked it, and I really loved Matthew Kassovitz. He's so cute.
He is so cute, and I like this movie too. I don't think it's great, but I do like it. I also I also mistake this movie for Jaco van Dormael's Toto Le Héros. I think I watched like 5 similar European movies in a month and was on no sleep or something because, and also anything I've watched since turning 45, it just goes into the memory soup in a different way than it did before that. So yes, rereading my review, I thought this movie, it's clever. I don't find it's not a movie that like envelops me emotionally, but
No.
it is smart.
And I don't need it to win a screenplay award. The screenplay is not the appealing part of this movie. It's the lead performance.
Yeah, and also a movie that dares to point fingers at France for its sort of unwillingness to face its the ugly past of collaboration during the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And then out of competition, we've got from Arnaud Desplechin, My Sex Life or How I Got Into an Argument, Comment je me suis disputé, Ma vie sexuelle.
Good job.
Thank you.
Guess I got one of them right every once in a while.
This movie is the world's introduction to Mathieu Amalric. He would win the César Award for Best Newcomer. I was wrong. It's this movie that is co-written with the son of Bourdieu. I really liked this. I liked its freewheeling nature. It kind of felt like a Whit Stillman movie, but from the other side of the pond. It's probably too long, but I liked that that audacity. And it's my second Desplechin, so now 2 for 2 I like. But tell me what you thought of it.
I don't remember liking this movie. I confused it with The Sentinel, which I really hated. This one I just thought was okay. I thought it was kind of forgettable, but I like the cast. I don't know. I've never liked any of his films as much as I've liked A Christmas Tale.
Emmanuelle Devos is amazing in this.
Yeah, she's amazing in everything, though.
From Aki Kaurismäki, we've got Drifting Clouds. Do you know your Finnish? Do you want to give this a go?
Oh, no, God, no. I do not know my Finnish at all. I rewatched this last night, and I'm so happy I did. He always puts you in exactly the right mood.
He does.
His artificial world is so endearing. It's like a child's storybook in a snow globe, but it doesn't shy away from like life's harshness either. And again, someone who strikes a perfect tone, a perfect balance in every single one of his films, and he's found actors who know how to perform it so well. I don't know. I think he's so wonderful.
His casting choices are so ace. Like that actress looks like the Scream, as you would say.
Yeah.
I would give this my jury prize.
Oh yeah.
And I find it interesting that it's part of the Finland trilogy, along with Man Without a Past, but it could just as well be part of his Proletarian series.
It's also his first time in competition. I don't think it's his first time at Cannes, and I wonder if the jury felt that it was just more of the same from him, because his movies do kind of run into each other, but they're mostly wonderful, and I don't know that I've ever seen him do anything bad. I think some of them are just more memorable than others, but this is certainly among my favorites of his.
It's the high contrast lighting mixed with a color story that looks like a poster that's been left in a window too long.
A lot of influence of Ozu as well in the way he fills his frames. He arranges his frames so carefully. There's no one else in the world who can make me want to go to a place that has so much Formica, but there you have it. Yeah.
The country also has a healthy welfare state. And as someone who recently traveled there, who I work with, told me that the urban planning and like the public works are very impressive.
Yeah, that's a part of the world where they get that right. It probably has a lot to do with the size of population and the homogeneity of culture of the people. But yeah, and they're not Scandinavian, but they are neighbors with Scandinavian countries that also do this well. So I think it's just a part of the world where it's just not as obsessed with individual capitalism as us crazy North Americans are.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also interesting to watch this movie now, given that it describes a economic situation that is very familiar to anyone watching it in 2024. It was made in reaction to the 90s recession. I think there's a lot in this movie that people could relate to.
No, it's desperate living. He doesn't shy away from the topic, even when he's being droll.
And he emphasizes the importance of the little guy, that they're not to be discounted for the wonders in their lives either.
And he shares that with Chaplin, I'd say.
Yeah.
Oh dear. From Julio, Medem, we have Earth or Tierra. Are you good at rolling your R's?
Tierra.
Yeah, terrible at it. This movie, I'd give the award for surrealism as an excuse for TNA.
As are all his films. I have seen a couple of his movies. I didn't mind Sex and Lucia, even though I don't think it's great.
No.
I liked The Lovers of the Arctic Circle. His movies are always sort of metaphysical storytelling as a way to emphasize a romantic plot. I feel like he gets at his most ridiculous and unaffecting and twee in this movie, which I found impossible to sit through. I was checking the time signature every 2 minutes, begging for it to end. Yeah.
I briefly passed out and woke up and didn't care to rewind to where I was.
Yeah.
It's brutal, and it also has it's in the running along with another movie we'll mention for the most 1996 movie, because there's an actress in it who has a Rachel haircut that is box dyed maroon.
Oh yes,
and
her.
it's
Yeah.
fucking hideous.
Silka. Yeah.
I don't want to see maroon. I don't want to see burgundy. I don't want to see wine. Not as a hair color.
I know.
Especially with a Rachel haircut.
It's the most 90s thing about that movie. She looks like she just came from like a Buffy viewing party.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Or that she's going to end up a vampire on Buffy.
Yeah.
And then we've got the only movie we could not source. Please help us out, listeners, if you know where you can find a copy. This is Goodbye South Goodbye by Hsiao-hsien, a very prized and loved director from the Taiwanese New Wave, and who makes very challenging movies, but I'm always down to watch them.
Yep.
And then let's pair these two movies together because they taught us that Bill and I should not be friends. Kansas City by Robert Altman and La Seconda Volta by Mimmo Calopresti. Basically, when Bill and I try to sit down to watch a movie for this pod, we just start catching up and talking about our lives.
We just yapped the whole time, and so Greg came over the first time because I found a copy of La Seconda Volta on Amazon. When it arrived at my house, when it arrived at my house, it turned out it was a VHS tape. And I had something to say to the seller about this because I did not feel... He insisted that he had made that clear on the listing. I do not feel the same way. So it's obviously not a movie I can lend to Greg to watch at home because I'm like the last person on earth who still has a VHS player. So he comes to my house to watch it.
It's called a VCR, by the way.
Thank you, Greg. And drop dead. And he comes over to my house to watch it. It turns out my VCR is broken. I did not find this out until Greg came over to watch this movie with me. So then we watched Kansas City instead, chatted throughout the whole thing. And then Greg came over again once I had bought a VCR off a man from his driveway, handing him $75 on his driveway and then driving myself back home. He came over to watch La Seconda Volta. We talked throughout the whole thing of that. So unless we have the shame of the public around us at a movie theater, Greg and I obviously can't watch movies together because I do not remember either of these movies particularly well. I know Kansas City well because I used to watch it all the time. I know what La Seconda Volta is about, but the next day I was like, what the fuck was that? I have to watch that again.
Did you?
So, no, I did not. But I do remember it well enough to talk about it here, which is that it's La Seconda Volta is a interesting story about a professor played by the very hot Nanni Moretti.
Very hot.
Very many years earlier, he had been shot during an activist demonstration by this young woman who was, idealistic. She goes to prison. She ends up on parole in, I guess, what Italy allows as a kind of halfway house work program where she sleeps in the jail at night, but she can work at an office during the day. And he runs into her because they have the same route to work, and he recognizes her, but she doesn't recognize him, and they start up a friendship. And it's a movie that means to be completely non-manipulative in its exploration of this kind of unique connection between these two people, but it's so unmanipulative that it's kind of just uneventful, really. I don't think that it's as poignant as it should be. It's also got Valeria Bruni Tedeschi in the role, the female lead. So yeah, it's not particularly memorable. I paid attention to it well enough to know that I didn't need to watch it again, despite paying $40 for a VHS that's now sitting on my shelf doing God only knows what for the rest of time.
We should ritualistically burn it. And then Kansas City. I remembered enough of it. I enjoyed the parts of it that it feels like his It feels like his love letter to Nashville fans. Like it's another movie with a city in it for its title that's situated in a music scene with a bunch of intersecting lives.
And it was always celebrated from when it was first released for the music scenes. The jazz scenes are particularly great. It's got a great cast. It's kind of a dowdy movie. Watching Robert Altman's movies where nothing happens is part of their pleasure, especially for people who love him, and the way he creates atmosphere and the way he combines characters. But I find there's a particular lack of nothing happening in this movie that really lacks the compulsion to stick with it. But Miranda Richardson is particularly outstanding in it, and it's just wonderful to remember.
And Harry Belafonte would have been a better best actor than...
Superb, yeah.
And spitting image, right?
Spitting image, our Spice Girl. And very cute Dermot Mulroney.
Very cute Dermot Mulroney, and that was our impersonation of Jennifer Jason Leigh for the second time on this pod.
Detroit.
And
yeah,
goodness.
Here we go. I could not wait for Greg to watch this movie. Once I watch this piece of shit, he's going to talk, not Kansas City, talk about the movie, but once I watched this, I was like, oh my god, I can't wait for Greg to watch this because I should not suffer alone.
The movie we're talking about is The Quiet Room from Australia by Rolf de Heer. And Bill, what would you have done if I didn't watch it?
I would have fucking killed you. I would have reached through my computer and choked you to death because there's just no way for me. Also because I needed you to see it, because I needed to know if you were seeing what I was seeing, which is this you think Twee is bad. This movie is insufferable.
Insufferable.
And can you imagine going to a red carpet event at the Cannes Film Festival in your $3,000 dress and you're being handed like Lindt chocolates on one side and champagne samplers on the other side, and you sit down and this starts playing, this crappy fucking CBC student film that maybe gets scheduled on a Sunday afternoon?
Oh my gosh, this movie, if I could give it an award, it'd be the best case for film as contraception.
Yes. It's about a little girl whose parents won't stop fighting, so she refuses to speak. Is that charming? Sure. It's
only charming when Bill does it after watching the piano.
But it's also the most obvious, narrative in terms of child dealing with their trauma. But we hear her thoughts, and her thoughts are all clearly an adult thinking that a child has the wherewithal to think these things in such an aware way, which children don't.
No.
But it's obnoxious the way they're like, the parent will say, we just want you to be happy. And then you hear the little girl's voice go, no, you don't. And it's just, and you don't grow to love the parents. You hate the child. You just want to choke everyone to death in this movie.
Absolutely. I turned this movie on in a cottage, in a forest outside of Ottawa. And Mike heard the first 5 seconds of it and said, nope, and walked away.
Understandably, because it looks like a cheap Canadian film. Like the house is ugly, like the sets are all hideous. It all looks like it was constructed 10 minutes before. The parents don't feel like they have a real lived-in relationship.
In a meme, it's shut the fuck up, Rebecca. He did not say that.
That's right.
Wretched movie. Also, the kid gets lipstick on her mom's blazer, and the mom acts like it's not going to piss her off, and that's the fakest moment in the whole movie.
Well, and also, they act like different people in every scene. Like, those parents, I don't believe that they're fighting. I don't believe that they have anything in common, let alone, issues with their relationship. Because I don't believe they're married to begin with. And also, the way they deal with her, they're so patient and kind with her, but then they decide to be mad at her at other times, too. Like, none of it really tracks psychologically, either.
I'm still wondering how this made it all the way to Cannes. They screen thousands of movies before selecting 20 of them.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. I wonder if they wanted an Australian film for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
From France, very famous movie, Ridicule by Patrice Leconte. He's famous for Monsieur Heer from 1989.
Yeah.
And this movie was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film that year. As we mentioned earlier, it lost to Kolya. And I'd give it the award for Best Water Sports.
I don't remember that. I wanted to rewatch this for this and I didn't. I remember thinking it was like a light, Dangerous Liaisons, basically. Like it's charming and I like the look of it, but it's not like a movie that really hits you hard.
Yeah, it starts stronger. It situates you in a court environment,
Yeah.
in a way that's very provocative intellectually, and then it works in a sappy love story that I don't give a shit about.
Yeah, and it's got great cast, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that I've ever loved Patrice Leconte's films all that much. So yeah.
And I'm just curious, do you agree with the movie's sentiment that puns are the death of wit?
I know that that's how people feel. I don't know. I don't think about it all that much.
Because I was thinking about a new drag name, Mona Lisa Cheeto. What do you think?
I mean, I understand why people might think that because puns aren't working as hard as wit, but
Yeah.
as a person who tries to find ways to be funny all the time in order to sort of distance people from myself and be memorable at the same time, I can't say that I ever calculated all that carefully to think about like which is better or which is more impressive. You know, you just sort of, yeah. Anyway.
And then our other nominee for most 1996 movie is Stealing Beauty by Bernardo Bertolucci.
Wow. Talk about overrated directors. I have never loved Bertolucci.
Never.
1900 is the film of his that I like the most, which is amazing because it's like 4 hours long and I don't find it boring. But I find all of his movies to be a really shallow experience and often aesthetically impressive, but not. They don't go deep for me at all.
Yeah, it's all artifice. They leave me cold. It's a strange feeling to see images so beautiful and not give a fuck about them.
Yeah.
And this is my third outing with him, and I'm not excited to get around to The Dreamers. Sorry, Saeed, if you're listening.
Yeah, it's not a great film. The only thing I will say about this movie is that it didn't. A lot of his movies feel dishonest in the way that they're not as deep as they think they are, and this one never felt like it was trying for more than it was. So
Yeah,
you just enjoy like the scenery and.
It's still pretentious in its setup of this group of poets and artists, though.
Yeah. I like Jeremy Irons' performance, though. I remember thinking he was good. And his wife, too.
Yeah, but I'm still certain he's being coded as having AIDS in that movie, because he's dressed exactly like Ed Harris in The Hours.
Yeah. He's a flaneur, is what he's playing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Is that what, like, a scarf around your neck, tucked into your shirt? That's what that is?
Yes, which was coded for tuberculosis a century ago. So, yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. Killer soundtrack though. I hate I hate needle drops, but I mean I like that whole song. I like that song by Hooverphonic.
Is there someone else who later became famous who's in that movie besides Rachel Weisz?
Liv Tyler,
yes,
aka,
she was
aka every straight man's reason to go to the movies.
Yeah.
She is a whistle only a dog can hear, Bill.
I think she's great. I love her.
Oh yeah. No, this is, as you would say, a zero on the binary for me.
Okay.
Moving on, we've got Woof. The Sunchaser by Michael Cimino. Cimino. Yeah,
this movie's another one. You know, I had a bad time with this year's festival because when we're getting ready for the show, I usually prioritize the movies I've never seen before first to make sure that I have time to watch them and then hopefully have time to rewatch other things in time for when we record. And it turned out with the 1996 Cannes Film Festival that I'd already seen everything that was good and that everything I hadn't seen yet was best left unseen. So my impression of this festival is that it was like a really bad selection, but that's just because I didn't get back to watching Fargo and Breaking the Waves. Of course, I rewatched Secrets and Lies. And there's just a lot to choose from for our turkey of this festival, including The Sunchaser, which is a movie that means well, but is incredibly poorly calculated. Everything about it is just done wrong, including believing Woody Harrelson as someone who studied long enough to become a doctor. Despite his best efforts at giving like a humane performance. Plus, I forgot how hot he was back then.
Crazy hot. He wears a mustache like a porn star.
But also, he's one of those guys where like he's wearing formal wear, but you can see a sexy, muscly body like straining out of his dress shirts.
Yeah, one of my friends, coworkers rather, played basketball with him at U of T campus and said he's very short and very lithe.
Yeah, not according to his Google search, but anyway. But this movie, and it has this like ridiculous Elmore Bernstein style score. It's a Maurice Jarre actually who wrote the music that like is bombastically loud in every scene as a way to sort of counterpoint the action. Apparently, the shooting of it was very difficult. Michael Cimino, John Seda said he still to this day was really grateful to work with someone like Michael Cimino who had made The Deer Hunter, and he loved the role. But that Cimino showed up like late and high practically every day. So the making of this movie was also difficult. It's just clearly made by somebody who doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, it starts as a movie that you hope will be a good bad movie, like a
Yeah,
Catherine Bigelow genre movie, and then just becomes bad.
but it does have the appearance of a Bond girl, who is my favorite part at the end. Yeah,
Yes, she's great.
yeah.
And then we've got, in the middle of the pack, we've got Temptress Moon by Chen Kaige, who listeners will remember from our first episode about the masterpiece Farewell My Concubine.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I could give this movie the award for best costumes or the award for wasted potential. Which one do I pick?
Yeah, because it's not a bad movie. It's such an empty movie. This movie
Exactly.
goes on for 2 hours and however long it does. It's not boring, but you're at the beginning of the movie by the time you get to the end. Like, you're still waiting for it to reach its, like, what it's really about. It's this very empty-headed romance set in something of a political background that is not really important to the story. And apparently shooting it was a debacle for
Yeah.
Chen Kaige. It was funded by Miramax as a way to, capitalize on his success with Farewell My Concubine. The budget kept getting out of control. He had a different leading lady than Gong Li. I don't know why, because I don't know why you would pick anybody else. Maybe she was originally unavailable. He replaced her with Gong Li. Of course, that drives the budget up even more. It ends up costing $7 million, and it was supposed to be much less than that by the time it comes out, and was banned in China. I don't know why. I guess because of the sexual explicit scenes, but like, it just had all these problems. And then you watch it, and it's just this like really, really middlebrow, empty experience.
Yeah, I would describe it as an emaciated epic.
Yeah,
It's got too much plot and not enough character development.
yeah.
So you're moving through events going like, wait, what the fuck? And things aren't registering because characters don't have believable emotions.
And unfortunately, Farewell My Concubine is the exception and not the rule with his
Yeah.
films. They're more like this.
By the way, I read that queer film classics monograph about Farewell My Concubine, and I recommend it. It's beautiful. It's great.
Great.
Next, we have from André Téchiné, Thieves or Les Voleurs, which you watched, and I did not because I can't figure out subtitles.
Well, we
So
have to figure out what's going on with that
no,
because
this is what happened. Mike came home, and I immediately said, "Mike, I know you're smarter than me. Make this work." And then he did. And then by that point, I
okay,
was going to bed because I was
okay,
tired.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just glad. Like, did you remember what he did?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But my question is, should I watch this now that
Only if
1996?
you're curious. I think this movie is okay. I love Teshine. I love that he is more. I love that he dares to always be more about character than plot. Although this is a movie about a love triangle, and love triangles only work for me if I'm pulled in multiple directions. And in this movie, especially when the center of the love triangle makes sense, Sunday Bloody Sunday is a good example of this because what's his name, Giles's brother from Buffy, is really cute. But in this movie, the center is a woman who I don't get why either of these people like her so much. I find her really off-putting, not physically, just off-putting. But you got a great performance by Catherine Deneuve, and you have a great performance by Daniel Auteuil. You have a very twinky young Benoit Magimel, looking like he's like 15 years old, and earning his first César nomination for it. And this sort of sexy world of like, car thieves at night, but it's it's a lot of fuss over something that's not really all that super satisfying at the end of the day.
All right, great promotion. I mean, I do want to watch more Daniel Auteuil because I find him so dashing.
Yeah.
And then we've got from Raoul Ruiz, uh, we've got Trois vies et une seule mort, or Three Lives and Only One Death,
Yeah.
the penultimate movie that Marcello Mastroianni made,
Yeah.
but I think the last one that ever screened.
Released, the last one released while he was still alive.
Yeah, and he was battling cancer while making it. You can tell it's the movie starting to take cancer's taking a toll on him throughout the shoot. He looks worse at the end of the movie than at the beginning. Not to suggest that the movie was necessarily filmed that way, but I just started to realize he was not looking well towards the end of it. And this movie, I would give it the award for worst example of multiple personality disorder as a literary device.
I love Raul Ruiz. I particularly love Time Regained. He is a surrealist. He's not as rebellious as Luis Buñuel, so sometimes his surrealism feels a little bit like
Diet?
I'm putting up with somebody showing off. This is far from my least favorite of his films, but it's also not one of my favorites. I think it's okay. It has its moments, but I wasn't really drawn into it. I loved seeing Marcello, still the king of the screen this late in his life and compromised by illness. And I loved seeing his daughter. I loved seeing Melville Poupeau. But ultimately, this movie just didn't make an impression.
I got pretty mad looking at Chiara Mastroianni in bell-bottom jeans and a snakeskin pattern top. Something about it, yeah. Again, like most 1996 moment. From Romania, we've got Too Late. Are you good with your Romanian, or should we just leave that one be?
I think it's Prea Târziu, but I don't know.
By Lucien Pintilie. And he had been here before, and his most, I looked him up, his most well-reputed movies are not movies that show at Cannes. He's famous for movies from the 60s and 70s.
Right, that's right, yeah.
And this gets the award for the most full frontal male nudity in competition.
It's very strange. I don't understand why you would be in coal mining naked. I understand that it's hot down there, but you just taking off your shirt should be enough. I feel like
okay with it.
Whipping your dick out is a vulnerability that is begging for trouble. Let's just say it's very strange.
I loved the scene where two guys are in the shower and one of them just like eyes the other one up and down, and you're like, what was that?
I found a lot of the men in that movie oddly sexy. Yeah, despite not being, they're not coded as sexy, but they are. Yeah.
No, it's bathhouse sexy. You're attracted to what's in front of you.
Yeah, and you're attracted to the potential of bad behavior. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is all Romanian men. They're all insatiable in bed.
This movie's a mixed bag, but I enjoyed watching it. It was an easy time.
Same. I did not love it, but I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And it's the same story as many films from Romania about political corruption, based on, I believe, a true story of a serial killer in a coal mine who's not discovered until after a few people die, what were originally thought of as accidental deaths. And it's interesting. It's fun. I like the female lead as well. I thought she was a lot of fun.
And I just enjoy this period of movies after the end of communism.
Yeah.
Contending with the contradictions of the communist years, but also the empty promises of the capitalist ones.
Yeah, and the fact that not much really changes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't be surprised, listeners, if you see this movie as like the eighth entry into a series on Romanian cinema on Criterion Channel.
Yeah.
Then it's not from Papua New Guinea. It's from Guinea-Bissau. There's 4 countries that are easy to confuse. There's Guinea, there's Equatorial Guinea, there's Guinea-Bissau, and Papua New Guinea.
That's right.
It's very easy to.
We know you play Wordle every day, Greg. We know.
Yeah, I play Wordle every day, and I do Sporkle. This is from Flora Gomes, and it's the version we got. I think is the one that was theatrically released because it's French funded, and it has French dub.
Yes, that's right.
It's a beautiful looking movie that
French dub or Portuguese?
I thought I was hearing French.
I don't remember. It was only 2 weeks ago, but I've been through a lot.
Yeah, no, I was hearing French, and it was it's so distracting.
Yeah, it is distracting. Yeah,
I found the images beautiful.
It's particularly distracting because like little boys are clearly being voiced by grown women putting on the voice of little children. Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
I did. It drives me crazy when it happens. Yeah.
And then a movie. We've got from Stephen Frears. We've got The Van, and I love Stephen Frears. We've talked about him before. When in 2 episodes ago, he is the jury president, and we mentioned some of his filmography that we love. Other movies of his that I would mention are that I like that we didn't mention before are High Fidelity.
Yep.
And a little movie from this year that is much better than this one and still not even a good movie, Mary Riley.
Yeah, I love Mary Riley. And this is his 3rd adaptation of a Roddy Doyle, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's pretty shallow and annoying. The men in this movie just yell. There's one volume and it's not Living Room ever. It has the comedic depth of a home improvement episode. It's about these 2 guys who are down on their luck economically, and they decide to open up a chip stand. And
his name is Bimbo.
Yeah, I was mad.
I found this movie charming. I did not find it important or memorable, but I remember thinking it was charming.
Fine.
No, I'm just surprised. I'm surprised they rubbed you so much the wrong way because I just remember not giving a shit about it one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so Greg, we've switched to a live broadcast now in case our listeners are noticing a difference in sound quality. We recorded our episode earlier. We are at the TIFF Lightbox, not Bell, to see the Palme d'Or winner, Honora. But before we do that, we realized that we forgot to mention our golden turkey, our dinde d'or for the 1996 Cannes Film Festival today.
How dare we?
So what was your choice?
Oh, it's The Quiet Room.
Mine is The Quiet Room too. All right, I'm glad we established that. I'm sure people could tell from the way we talked about it, but I wanted to make sure that we knew that despite there being a few pretty strong choices this year.
Yeah, if you make a movie that is an appeal to treat children better and it makes me want to throw the main character down the stairs, you're not doing your job.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, back to the real program.
Now, you're under no obligation, but you can if you want to give me a lovely big smile. Thank you.
I wonder if she knows.
I haven't told her.
I hope Cynthia doesn't know either.
She doesn't.
That's all right then.
You've been sitting there for a month with a face like a slapped horse.
You complaining? Well, shut up then.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
On any
And now we move on to our Palme d'Or winner.
I am so happy to talk about Secrets and Lies. I'm always happy to talk about Secrets and Lies. I'm always happy to talk about Mike Leigh. This and Topsy Turvy are my favorites of his films.
Agreed.
I still remember the day I saw this. I went downtown to the Carlton to see it, and I remember it was one of those movies where you go home and you're skipping. You're so happy to watch something that you're so impressed by. It's also one of the movies when I think about Palme d'Or winners, and in the 90s when I first became aware of the Cannes Film Festival and what it meant to win a Palme d'Or. I think of this. I think of Pulp Fiction. I think of The Piano, as we mentioned before, as being like the movies that really put that on the map for me, and also turned me on to Mike Leigh. I had seen Naked before. To watch that movie as a teenager is just the wrong time to watch it. I thought it was boring and dour. And it's not until I watched it again more recently that I could really appreciate why it's so good. But it is his toughest film. I think it's his grimmest and darkest film. But once I saw this, I was all about him. And I love it so much.
I had a realization watching this movie and reading up on it. No one from a Mike Leigh movie, no one has ever won an Oscar for acting for a Mike Leigh movie.
Yeah.
And that to me is crazy because he should by now have produced as many acting nominations as Woody Allen.
Yeah, it's partly because I just wonder if it just doesn't seem like acting to people because it's so natural. I think it's also just because they're very, very British, his films, and I think the Academy feels that it's nice enough of us to nominate you because they win at home all the time. And so I feel like that might be part of it. I also love that his movies are constructed and calculated and yet never feel that way. In this movie, this movie is swimming in narrative ironies that could be eye-rolling in a lesser director's hands. Mm-hmm. Of course, the main plot is basically that a woman goes in search of her birth mother, having known that she was adopted from childhood, and this young professional black woman finds out that her mom is a working class white woman from East London. So you have the juxtaposition of the mother and daughter with the juxtaposition of white and black and also poor and middle class. I mean, poor is the wrong word, but strivers versus middle class. And actually, in fact, Cynthia and her lot, they're not poor. They're just they live a certain way and they're from a part of town where things don't change. But
yeah, she's not living on the dole. No,
but her, she works a boring factory job. I'm the only one on slits. But her brother made enough from his inheritance to invest in a very successful photography store. It's a culture, I suppose, is what I mean, more than necessarily an economic status.
Well, and the class comes out in mores and customs more than in how their houses look.
And in the way they speak, which is very British.
Yeah.
Where's this food then? I'm ravishing.
Yeah. And I love that when they go to the movies, they go to see Sylvester Stallone in Judge Dredd. I just adore that. Yeah. Anyway.
Let's talk about these characters for a moment. So
I mean,
this,
they're just magical to me. So one thing that people always get wrong about Mike Leigh is that they refer to his films as being improvised. A friend of mine who hosted a movie podcast talked about this, and I did my best to clear it up for him in a way that was not as obnoxious as I usually am. And he was adamant that he had read it on the internet and that he was right. But I mean, I've heard Mike Leigh talk about it in interviews. I've heard his actors talk about it in interviews. Did a little bit of my own internet research about it as well. His movies are not improvised. His movies are the result of a lot of months of improvisation, where he creates a character, or he and an actor come up with a character together, and they explore that character's life and their back history. They go through a long time of creating a whole life for that character. He does that with a bunch of people, and then he starts putting them in rooms together. He might give them a secret. In this case, we can probably guess what it is. In this case, every character has a secret. And then he has them improvise until they come up with stuff, and he will write a script based on what has come up from that improvisation. So what you're watching on film has been scripted. And something that people don't know if they're not actors is that it's really hard for an actor to do an improvised drama. You need a guideline from which to work in order to create truth from that. So just to clear up that mess before we talk about these incredible characters, it's also fascinating to me that phone call where Hortense calls Cynthia. I forgot that happens over an hour into this film.
yeah.
Like, we have spent this whole movie building up our knowledge of these people before that happens. So yeah, we've got Cynthia, who works at a box factory, who lives in East London. I looked on the map at where she lived to make sure that I got that right. I think I'm right. She lives, Quilter Street is a real street. Her daughter Roxanne works for the council. She's a garbage. She cleans the garbage off the streets of London. She has the craziest face, those big eyes, and that, she really does walk around with a face like a slapped ass. They are very much women of their neighborhood, of their time. The cigarettes are nonstop, the booze at all hours, and they are always fighting. And then we have Hortense, who is an optometrist whose mother just died, who goes in search of her birth mother. We also have Cynthia's brother, who is a photographer, lives with his very unhappy wife, whose
Monica.
name is Monica, played by Mrs. Hughes from Downton Abbey.
Yes.
Who
Phyllis Logan.
who is constantly having menstrual cramps because she can't have kids. They haven't told anyone that they can't have kids. Cynthia never told anyone other than her brother and sister-in-law that she even had a baby when she was 16 years old. It's never expressed, but we get the impression that it was not a good circumstance under which she had that child.
Mm-hmm.
And she also never told Roxanne who her father was. That's a very touching scene when she does at the end.
Yeah.
And it's so moving when Hortense asks about her dad and she says, I just can't. And then there's Mike Leigh always has these little moments of smaller characters who might not have necessarily been smaller characters in the original edit, because he's kind of like Woody Allen, which is that the movie gets shaped quite a bit after it's shot, and you might have shot a lead role that ends up being one scene in the film. In this case, we have Tim Cook, I think is his name, as the former owner of the photography shop, who comes in and sort of spreads his misery. That's a character that shows up in Mike Leigh's films a lot.
I'm not a tosser.
In fact, I would say that most of Mike Leigh's characters are ones that repeat in all of his films. And I don't mind, especially the juxtaposition of working class women, one of them being chirpy and kind of annoying and overly optimistic, and the other one being a real pessimist. I feel like that's a juxtaposition that happens in a lot of his films, going back to his TV days.
Monica is another version of the successful but unhappy sister in Happy Go Lucky.
That's right, and the two women in All or Nothing as well. But I just don't mind.
No, I don't.
And I particularly love this film. It's a film I've watched many, many times over the last nearly 30 years. And as with many films that you love and watch frequently, you have a relationship with them that is different generally every time you see it. And in this case, I think the last time I watched it, I wasn't particularly affected by it. And I was like, oh, I hope I'm not getting over this movie. And then when I watched it for this show, I just cried nonstop for 2.5 hours. Anybody else would be terrible in the role of Cynthia. She would be so annoying. But Brenda Blethyn is first of all, she's so beautiful. You just love her face. You just want to squeeze it in your two little hands. And also so endearing. Her need for validation would be irritating if played by somebody else, I'm sure it would be irritating in real life. But in the film, I find it so endearing, but also so sympathetic.
And it's the result of the work they put into it. They've given this character a whole history. She's
Yeah.
explained.
Also, the secrets in this film are many, and it's not just the secrets they have from each other. It's the secrets that they have from themselves. They all deny their own sorrow and pain. They all insist that they just accept what they're disappointed by and have lived on, but they're actually all trapped in it. Cynthia hasn't changed her life since her daughter was little, since her father died, because she won't accept the fact that she's so angry at her brother for basically moving on and leaving her behind. And Monica also is trapped in the fact that she really is so unhappy about the fact that she can't have a kid, and she can't even communicate it to her husband. So she does what people always do when they're unhappy about something and not honest about it, which is that she yells at him about literally everything else that she can think of.
And makes her house her baby.
That's right. And her house is like antiseptically clean to the point of being, you don't even know how people can live in it. Also, this vision of middle class living in the 90s, of people thinking that house is like great, and it just, to me, it just looks like a really shitty Laura Ashley catalog.
Oh, what did you think of the Mediterranean bathroom?
Oh God. And I remember in the theater that got a huge laugh for the way Cynthia goes, and that's your tank? There's the tank. And I will let you speak eventually. But also the way this movie ties knots and unties all of them in such beautiful, satisfying ways. All of it coming at the last 20 minutes in one scene in a house.
Yeah. And convincingly.
Yeah. And do these people need to be this unhappy? It's one thing to say that, in Cynthia's case, that she has this emotion, this economically downtrodden life in this miserable neighborhood. But does she need to be this unhappy? Or do people need to start to be more honest? And then secrets are unveiled and everyone's life gets better. Even though the scene where she gets a phone call from a baby that she keeps trying to forget and can't forget. And when she says, "Did you ever think about me?" She's like, "Of course I did, all the time." So moving. Yeah. It's so hard when she hears from her. She's so scared and she's so upset. And then it's better. She calls her back and says, "Maybe we'd like to meet." And meeting her is really hard and upsetting. And then she buys Roxanne steak to eat for tea. And the sun just shines brighter. And it's so cheesy in description, but it feels so good when you're watching it. When she goes and gets her hair done, my mom's friend saw this movie in the theater, and that was the first thing she talked about. She loved that she went and got her hair done. My mom also really loves this film because she loves anything that strikes her as quote unquote real. And it's so moving. It's so moving.
Yeah, it's is it fair to say that he inherits from kitchen sink realism? Like, do you think
absolutely. That's definitely his purpose. I think has always been to show that the working class in London are interesting people with interesting lives that have been maybe reduced by kitchen sink drama, but certainly ignored by the tradition of heritage period films that are much more popular in British cinema, which I don't like to speak too badly about because so many of them are wonderful. I think it's just important that everything has its place, and
Yeah, no, it's when we say social realism, it's usually a term of flattery, but but people forget that it also includes Belfast.
Yeah.
The thing about his movies, and I know what you mean, like you go back and remember, it doesn't look like cinema verite. It's actually very cinematic, and the Dick Pope photography, it moves and it has distances and he's playing with light.
And he started in the theater, and his work is very theatrical as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just so impressed every time I watch this, how much it all comes together, and not in a way that should feel contrived, even if it is. Even the title should piss me off when he finally says it. Like, it's a usual pet peeve for me when someone says the title of the movie in the movie.
Yeah.
The best case being the movie I Know Who Killed Me.
Well, that, and I was recently in a play called An Appointment with Death, and when the lead character says, "You've got an appointment with death," and Melissa and I backstage would always go, "Dun dun dun." So yeah.
You're going to the bank, the blood bank. And the fact that or the moment where Cynthia goes up to Monica and hugs her after Monica's revelation to the family, and if these characters hadn't been set up enough, if they hadn't been explained enough, if they haven't been explored enough, that scene would be saccharine and
Yeah.
corny. And yet we just need it so much that by the time it happens, we're weeping. Like this
Yeah.
movie has us like putty in its hands.
And also, sometimes isn't that just all some people need? Can we all just be a little bit softer with each other?
I know.
And it's an interesting juxtaposition with Breaking the Waves, because in both cases we have two lead characters who are they're too sensitive for this world, and no one around them can make room for it.
Yeah.
Cynthia is a very vulnerable person, and she's been forced to be hard because she had to take care of her brother and her dad from when she was a little girl because her mom died. So she was the one, cooking and cleaning from when she was like 12 years old. And that made her grow up real fast. And then we see the results of that in the fact that she had children very young, unsupported by the men who got her pregnant. But in Breaking the Waves, again, her vulnerability is being exploited by a director who's celebrating it. In this movie, It's something completely different. And again, brought to life so powerfully by this actress who became a huge star very late in life. I think she's already in her late 40s when she makes this movie.
But this is so common in British theater and cinema.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know that she was that well known to British audiences, although she'd been in a lot of his TV films. She was already in A River Runs Through It at this point, so she had worked. But I don't even know that she was a household name in England. Yeah.
But like Judi Dench, Maggie Smith, like all these people, their careers take off in their 40s.
In movies, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, Brenda becomes a Miramax darling for a little while. She gets a second Oscar nomination for Little Voice. And I remember her on the red carpet that year when she said, I'm just having a wonderful time. And the guy was like, you're not nervous or anything? She goes, no. She goes, the first time I was here, I was nervous because there was a chance I could win when she was nominated for Secrets and Lies. But he goes, not this time? She goes, no, I don't have a chance in hell. And she goes, I'm just having a wonderful time. I feel like a princess. And again, she's so beautiful, and that smile, and you just want to be around her all the time. And I kind of regret that after a few years of her being in a whole bunch of movies that my friends and I never missed because we adored her. And then she kind of disappeared from film. She's been on a British detective show for the last 20 years. So she's doing all right. But I kind of miss those years of her being a leading lady in films.
What's the one where she grows weed?
Saving Grace. She's so funny in that movie. When she starts giggling and she's like, you're Scottish. Yeah.
Her character has levels. At the beginning of the movie, we see her pissed. And then when we see her getting herself together and telling her daughter that she got her steak, but she's going out, and we see that she's put together, we realize, oh, this is right. It should be obvious to us that people can present themselves and get dolled up, but it doesn't occur to us that she would, and it's so endearing because she feels so real when she does that. She's still vain.
She also never embarrasses herself. This is something that a lot of times movies about a working class woman usually try to exploit, is that she doesn't know how to behave in a restaurant. And that doesn't happen in this movie. She knows how to behave in a restaurant. She just doesn't go to them, even when she can afford it, because it's not her world. But she's not uncomfortable,
But speaking about the levels, though, she falls apart in the company of her own family.
Yes.
So she's normal in a restaurant, but then in that shot when they're in the barbecue, and it's so uncomfortable.
Not even. The moment the door opens, she can't handle herself. Her voice gets higher in that scene as soon as she gets to Monica's house, because the moment she walks into that house, every inch of it is reminding her of what she's pissed off about, sad about, resentful about. And she becomes, sorry to say it, shrill in the way and she's so like, do you want this? Do you want some more of this? Do you want that? Like, she's so in people. Yeah. She becomes my sister, basically, when you go to her house for dinner. Where it's just apart. Like, could you please relax? And so it's no surprise that Hortense just steps out of the room for half a second and she's like, by the way, she's my daughter. Like, she has to release without the slightest prompting. She has to tell them. It has to come out because she just can't help herself. Again, High Hopes ends with everyone unveiling and falling apart in a house situation, in a moving to a better neighborhood house as well. And I don't mind that this movie falls into the same. It does the same thing.
And the Leslie Manville character in Another Year is a variation on Cynthia.
And then Leslie Manville in this film, I had never seen her before. I did not know who she was. And I remember my friend Bree seeing this movie, and the first thing she said to me was like, oh my God, didn't you love The Social Worker? the choice that she has to play it with that soft voice and this presentation, and you are somebody who, I know you are a social worker. I know that you don't deal in this specific department, but I don't have to explain to you that it is a job done by people who genuinely care, but also never have enough time to treat everyone with the level of attention that they deserve.
And have to sneak in a Rolo while they're serving
That's
a client.
right, the Rolo. The way she is both, she genuinely does care about what Hortense is being exposed to in that scene, that what she's learning. She genuinely has 12 other people that she has to do this for that day. So the way that she's looking at her watch all the time without being a bitch is also the level of sensitivity of this film, of understanding how real life is, that people are both genuinely caring, but also way too busy to give you the space you need. She's underfunded, of course.
She's a seasoned professional who cares about her clients.
Yes.
And it makes me wonder, like, would she have gone to talk to social workers? Would she have had friends who would have told her about it more? The movie makes me so curious about the work that went into each character, knowing that they spent so much time with it. And with the character of Hortense, when she is behaving herself around this new person she's meeting and in this company that she's been introduced to, and I use that language pointedly, you really can tell that she was adopted into a family that taught her how to be proper in society if she wants to survive, if she wants to if she wants to make it. And she was probably also told by her parents to point at people like Cynthia, not point at them. She'd been taught to not point, but to look to people like Cynthia with pity, because they're people who actually had more opportunity given to them than Hortense's family, and spoiled it. And so
because they are middle-class black people who see white people struggling, and they're like, but you don't have the obstacle that I have. Why? As Chris Rock said, that his mom would never give money to a white bum because she'd look at him and say, no need for that. Like
and of course we know it's not that. We know it's more complex than
of course, but
we appreciate that perspective.
Of course, especially her parents are probably what they call the Windrush immigrants. So yeah, they would have gone through quite a lot to establish themselves. Because her father, what did she say her father was? He was like a professor or something. Yeah. Her parents both had, educated jobs. She is an optometrist, which is not an easy thing to be.
That's right.
But at the same time, it is interesting that the only glimpse we have of her family is her siblings fighting over the house.
That was interesting. In fact, the most we get of a perspective into her life at all is a conversation between her and a best friend.
I love that friend. I love that scene. I love that we give that scene the time that we give it. I love Marianne Jean-Baptiste's performance so much in this movie, and I love that she was nominated for an Oscar, because it's not an Oscar-y performance. It's her just being real and open and sensitive to what's happening around her and reacting in these very subtle ways, because her character is not a gregarious person. The way that she shows the courage and strength of this character deep down inside, because she's not somebody who wants to call attention to herself. She sees everything clearly. She is an optometrist. That's a narrative device that, again, could be pedantic in a bad director's hands.
Or a photographer, for that matter.
Yeah, she likes to see, and she likes to help people see, but she doesn't necessarily want to be seen. She's not someone who wants to call that much attention to herself. So the fact that she goes out of her way to discover this aspect of her past, which, by the way, I don't know if this is the movie doing it or if things are different in England. My understanding from having had people in my life who have gone in search of long-lost biological relatives is that everything is done through an intermediary until the actual meeting.
Probably changes from region to region.
Maybe, or because the fact that she has her phone number and is able to just call her, but I guess maybe because she's also able to look up her name in the phone book. And Cynthia hasn't changed address in 40 years. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love that character. I also love the character of, is her name Jodie? Jane.
I wish I had a father like you, Maurice.
None of the characters in a Mike Leigh film are phoned in. Everyone is there for a reason, and everyone has their own life. And I love Elizabeth Barrington, who plays his receptionist. She also has a great small role in Tristram Shandy, A Cock and Bull Story, where she plays the costume designer who just starts wailing in tears when they're given notes at the end of the day about costumes. She's so good.
She's so good, and so is Emma Amos as the the girl who worked in beauty and
Oh,
then
yes.
flew through a windscreen.
All the stuff at the photography store I adore. It's
Yeah.
especially that whole sequence of like the people he's photographing. I remember being in the movie theater and that moment, that scene being when I was like, oh, I'm watching a masterpiece. Like I knew right away that I loved the movie. And then didn't know it at the time, but of course a lot of the people in those shots are guest appearances by actors familiar in the Mike Leigh world, including his ex-wife, Alison Steadman.
And we've got Ruth Sheen and Peter
Yeah.
White.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the scene. That's the scene where it reveals so much of the movie's perspective. Where Maurice says to her, "Like life isn't fair, is it? Some people just get the short end of the stick."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in Mike Leigh, he works in these two. He works in these two dictums and ways of viewing life, worldviews. And I guess this is what makes this movie so resonant: is you have these contrasting views. One is that life isn't fair, is it? Some people get the short end of the stick. But then you also have Poppy in Happy Go Lucky saying, you got to make your own luck.
Yeah, you also have a really realistic optimism. You have the touch, as you say, it's so touching when she hugs Monica. But this is also in a scene where her brother comes over to visit her for the first time in years, and he just heads straight for the outhouse bathroom. Yeah. And she says, I would have warmed up the seat if I knew you were coming. And the fact that she's talking to him while he's taking a shit, like that level of detail, as a way to also show the uncomfortable intimacy of growing up in that world where you're just always on, like everyone knows everybody's business. You as one of 5 children.
Oh yeah, I've literally shaved when my sister took a shit.
That's right. Which was probably a common occurrence in a house of so many kids. It's not something I knew because I was taught that shame is what God put us on this earth for. But I also had one sister who was 6 years older, so we didn't, we weren't on top of each other in the same way. So that aspect of it, that level of graininess is also something I really love about this film. So that when the more romantic flights of fancy, like her getting her hair done because she's going to go out with her newly found daughter, it just roots it in something so much more important.
Or even Roxanne putting on a button-up top as a way to acknowledge that it's her birthday.
Roxanne smokes more than Bette Davis. She is constantly smoking in anyone's living room, in anyone's house. I've already told you that the part where she gets the card with the money makes me very middle-class uncomfortable.
The way she pulls up her glass for more wine, like she has no living room or dining room manners.
She's also still sympathetic, despite the fact that no character challenges you more than her in this film. She's
Absolutely.
Not pretty. She's not nice. She is on the defense all the time. But at the same time, her mom is shitty to her when she's just like, well, I had to take care of you, didn't I? And she's like, well, then you shouldn't have had me. Like, people who blame their kids for existing are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, I know where she's coming from, and I genuinely feel for her because, she's always wanted to know who her dad is. She's never been told. And then all of a sudden, her mom turns out to have had another kid that she never knew about. It's crazy. It's just crazy. And then
the way you see her light up around her uncle, you realize, like, you see the kid that she was.
Yeah.
And you know that this is what life has done to her.
And after this movie, she was in Spice World the year after as their tour organizer or whatever. And at the end, in the outtakes, the Spice Girls all say "sweetheart" to her because they're mentioning that their castmate was in a celebrated film. Well, not as celebrated as Spice World, but a celebrated film all the same.
If you're going to give a award for acting to multiple actors in a movie, I've been much more interested in an award to Brenda Blethyn, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, and Claire Rushbrook, and Phyllis Logan.
Yeah.
And Leslie Manfield. Then give it to the 2 leads from Le Huitième Jour. Yeah.
Phyllis Logan also has a lot to work with because this character is also really hard to like.
She is so good.
She's so good, but people she basically plays my mom. Like, people who think that being upset about everything will compensate for the fact that they're worried about everything. You know what I mean? Like, people who are...
These flowers are very bright.
Yeah, like people who just won't fucking let it go.
Yeah.
Having a steak, are you? That'll put hair on your chest.
Yeah. and she... The way that she doesn't resemble my mother. My mother didn't need everybody to know how much everything cost. My mom would rarely ever give someone a house tour and let them know how difficult everything was to procure. She'd rather just welcome you in. But that aspect of her, that's also very hard to take. And you do, again, you feel so strongly for her because, again, these people are all in such denial to themselves. And once they finally let that go, isn't it wonderful? how easy it is to like everybody once you're honest with yourself about your own fears and flaws.
This is good living, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, the ending is heaven. The two girls, you know, and how much you grow to love Roxanne when she's like, "Shall I introduce you as my sister?" Yeah, and she's like, "Yeah, probably best to just be honest and not, you know." Even though you know that she's going to go to the pub with her sister once, and Hortense is going to be like, "I don't think so."
Yeah,
we'll just
go to a movie once in a while.
Yeah, we don't need to hang out all that often. Like, no, but at the same time, it feels so great, and you know, Brenda Blethyn with her girls at the end. I get teary just thinking about it. It's so fucking good. Yeah.
I have questions about, you know, you go back and rewatch a movie and you can start to pick it apart. And I don't want to pick this movie apart, but I do have questions and I want to know what you think. Is Hortense a little too virtuous? Not thinking about how Marianne is performing her, which is complex and unassailable, but is like does Hortense have no flaws? Or do we have a guess who's coming to dinner situation?
She is having trouble processing her grief, I think, is her flaw. I know exactly what you mean. And of course, there is that worry about making this movie where race is a part of the story and treating it a bit too gingerly. It is interesting that that's not, that Cynthia's character never says, they never say anything overtly racist. I think that's also Mike Leigh trying to point out the fact that it's just too easy a call to insinuate that lower, like middle class or working class people are always racist.
Yeah.
But I think that is her thing. She's having trouble connecting with the world around her. You know, she's seeing everybody through lenses again.
Yep.
You know, narrative devices. But I think there is a lot of also what you say about having been raised by parents who make her very, very, very conscious about how she presents in the world, how she behaves. It's interesting the grace that she gives at the end when she comes back from the bathroom. Yeah. Like she has to go to the bathroom just to take a breathing break. She's pretending that she has to pee. She doesn't really have to pee.
Yeah.
She just needs a break from the tension in the room because she's not like Cynthia. She can't let people see that. That has to be hidden. And then she comes back in the room. The cat's been let out of the bag, and yet she still has this very controlled response to that because she's constantly conscious of how she is seen. Also, she's a black woman, and I remember a friend of mine who is a black woman telling me that she always has to worry about not coming across as an angry black woman, even in situations where she's trying to get across what she needs to get across in a conflict at work. And I would not be surprised if that's something that Hortense is constantly aware of as well, especially when she's the only black person in an entire house.
Right. So it's not that she is like calm and collected because she's innately perfect. It's because she's been socialized and brought up to keep her cool in situations like this.
She's always looking at how she is seen at the same time that she is seen. Again, all this scene. Oh my God, we are at 2 hours. I am curious to know, who did Monica think she was when she opened the door? Remember, she opens the door when Hortense comes to the house and immediately she goes, "Oh no, sorry," and tries to close the door on her.
I mean, I think it was him just trying to make an observation about how in even the most tacit ways, when you hang out with your own tribe all the time, you take for granted that you will have certain encounters with other people.
Yeah.
And this is like 1996 is almost 30 years away from where we are now. It is a taken for granted, especially in Toronto, that you will have coworkers, chums, classmates of multiple cultural backgrounds.
But I do feel that there were black people in that neighborhood at that time.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm saying that even in the same neighborhoods, it would take a lot of gumption to reach across race socially. So even in their own neighborhood, they'd be like, "Oh, I don't know why you're here to see us." She's not even thinking about the bias that she's expressing from. She isn't like that's. That it's a smart scene because we are the way it ends up being glib in today's discourse about how every encounter and every social encounter is a racializing encounter.
Right.
But the truth to it is in scenes like this, which is like you're unconsciously working from assumptions, even when you're not aware you're doing it.
I also wonder if she thinks she's like a Jehovah's Witness. I wonder if she associates black people with being
No,
religious.
exactly. She thinks
Yeah.
she's a Jehovah's Witness, a salesperson. She thinks she's here for something else. She thinks
Right.
that she's probably knocking on the door of the black family next door. There's a racial bias.
But it's interesting that it also never occurred to her that there would be racialized people at Cynthia's workplace, given that she works in a factory, in a town where those are the people who are usually given the underclass jobs.
But her bias also is that Cynthia wouldn't have black friends.
Yeah,
and maybe she's right.
Yeah. I just find it very interesting because it's never really called back to, but it's always an interesting moment.
Yeah, it is an interesting moment. But I do have a question about plausible plot details. In a house that manicured, do you believe Monica would allow people to smoke indoors?
I wonder, I thought about that too. Was that happening in the 90s? But this is England.
Your parents had ashtrays.
Yeah, they did. But I don't know if they had them in 1996. I think they had them in 1989 and before that. I feel like but North America is different than England.
Yeah. Just
so
like all that wallpaper gone to waste, you know what I mean?
But I also don't think Monica lets people smoke in her house. I think that she's picking her battles on this particular day because Roxanne's coming over for the first time in 100 years. And her, as far as she knows, the way she deals with Cynthia is to keep her hands off, even though she's actually judging her and snapping at her with everything she says. But in her mind, Monica thinks, I just let Cynthia be and I live and let live.
Wouldn't be a party without punch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about this movie? I feel like we've really covered it.
We've covered it, and then at the same time, I could go on for hours. So let's just wrap her up.
But I'm just curious. Do you think this one deserved the palm?
Yeah. I think there's no question that this would be my pick from this list of contenders, that this would be the Palme d'Or. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe given especially the way Breaking the Waves was reacted to, I'm sure there was an argument over those two films, but I can't see how they could have given it to anything else. Unless, of course, The Quiet Room just snuck in there. Yeah. Or Fargo. I assume Fargo would have also been. Yeah.
Yeah, it's those three movies really that are at the top tier. And it is my Palme d'Or as well. And it really is a Palme d'Or for the ages.
But if you could pick any movie from 1996, Greg, what would you give it to?
I have to go sentimental and pick the movie that one of the first movies I really cut my teeth on and figured out that I was really into movie watching as a hobby. And that is Trainspotting. I have seen it so many times. I can quote almost the whole thing. I said it before, the soundtrack is my favorite non-score soundtrack of all time. I love every performance. I regret that some of those actors never got that good ever again, including Johnny Lee Miller with bleach hair.
Yeah.
And it moves from comedy to tragedy like really smoothly, and it's just aged so well, as you said. And the marketing campaign is one of the most brilliant things Miramax ever did. That orange and gray color scheme.
Yep.
You saw that in posters and record shops for years afterwards.
Yeah, and you knew exactly what it was.
I had a poster on my bedroom wall of Renton, and it has the "Choose Life, Choose a Job" speech next to it.
Yeah. One of the handful of times my sister had to walk out of a movie theater during film.
Because of the dead baby or the shit scene?
No, we don't care about dead babies in this family. My sister cannot look at a needle to save her life, so that movie, of course, was a hard sell for her.
She went to see a movie about smack?
And at one point, she was swooning in her seat. She's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I knew why. So she went out, and I was like, I should probably go check on her, but I don't want to miss the movie. So my sister could have been passed out dead in the hallway outside the theater for all I knew. And I was like, oh, I'll catch up with her later. I want to see the film first. So, yeah. So she was okay, but she had to watch a lot of that film through. She can watch a lot, but she cannot look at needles, including going to the doctor with my cousin who was having I think it was her varicose veins she was getting shot in. And the needle went in. My sister went in with her for moral support. And then my sister flat out fainted. And the doctors then had to ignore my cousin to take care. It was like a scene in an Albert Brooks movie. They had to take care of my sister because she had.
We have another friend like that.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And I wanted to also mention this movie introduced me to Shirley Henderson.
Yes, so wonderful. Who will show up giving a brilliant performance in a Mike Leigh film 3 years later. Yeah.
That's right.
The sun whose rays are all ablaze with ever-living glory. Yeah.
Bill, what would you pick for the Palme d'Or out of this year?
Since you did an ex aequo last time because you're a dickweed, I get to do an ex aequo this time.
Let me guess. Portrait of a Lady and The English Patient?
No, I will give it to Secrets and Lies and The English Patient because I love them both. They are complete opposite ends of a spectrum of filmmaking style. They're both movies that I cherish very deep in my heart, and which one I'd rather watch really depends on the day.
Did your heart sink when you realized you had to cut Portrait of a Lady?
No, I did not. I understand The Portrait of a Lady is not everyone's favorite movie, but it's a movie that I enjoy watching. The English Patient is also Ralph Fiennes at his smoking hottest. And I remember at the time that it came out, I had a really sexy wet dream about him that I still remember in glorious detail.
Bill, King Solomon tells you can only pick one Fiennes brother. Which one is it?
That's actually a good question because I think Rafe is better looking, but I think Joseph is probably a lot more fun in bed.
Yeah.
And actually has like the sexier body, to be honest.
He looked incredible in Stealing Beauty.
Oh, that's right. He's in that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. With sun in his hair.
Yeah. So wonderful.
That's exciting.
Wonderful actor. Yeah.
I need to rewatch The English Patient. I haven't seen it since I read the novel last year.
Oh, it's divine. Again, I understand. I know the Seinfeld episode everyone's thinking of. I know why a lot of people don't like it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, we can take 60 seconds to talk about this because this is a problem. A bone I do want to pick with people, which is like just because a movie is mannered and is a costume drama does not mean that it is a cliche or boring choice. Like it is.
Yes, and I also do understand that when you look at the Oscar picks from the 80s and 90s especially, there is a sort of propensity towards a certain kind of epic, war epic, biopic.
Mm-hmm.
And I get why there is a joke to be made about that. But there are movies that are the exceptions and not the... I mean, there are movies that are made in that vein that didn't win or were even nominated, like Cold Mountain, speaking of Anthony Minghella. Like movies that are playing to that stereotype that aren't picked. So, like Out of Africa is also a movie that I really love. But I don't know, I love a double tape drama. Like I love a lot of movies that other people think are really boring that don't even qualify as slow cinema in the art house world that I find scintillating. So
I mean, it's the David Lean tradition.
Yeah. So
well, Bill, won't you tell our listeners what's coming up in our next episode?
Yes, we're going back to the past. We are returning to the 50s once again to talk about the only Soviet film that ever won the Palme d'Or.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing you there.
I'm always looking forward to seeing you, Greg. All right, I guess that's the end. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Riviera Rats.
Our podcast is hosted and produced by Bill Antoniou and Gregory Roseborough.
Our music is by Joe Organ.
Our artwork is by Leo Kuvaris.
Follow us on Instagram at Riviera Rats.
Write to us at ratsriviera@gmail.com.
If you want to support our show, tell your friends about us.
Leave us a rating and a review on whatever podcast app you use.